Okay, I will run through that one more time. This time without the stumbles. So I'm going to go ahead and call this meeting of the Dunn County Executive Committee to order. Call of the roll. I believe we have everybody but Supervisor Steen, who is excused. Approval of the minutes. I would need a motion in a second. Supervisor Morehouse moves. Supervisor Headland seconds. Any speaking to the minutes? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And it passes. Public comments. I don't have anything. Okay, no public comment. County managers report. Chris, over to you.
So first item, draft July county board agenda. I don't, other than the fact that there will be the Department of Reports of Human Services and West Central Regional Planning. I think everything else that's on the agenda is listed in under number 6 and number 7 on our agenda. So unless there's any other feedback about that. All right. Okay. I just wanted to give you just a quick rundown because you get our Friday emails as well. And because we were trying to be good about our correspondence about this particular thing, we did run a drill. So we know from some of the work, when I say we, I know like Dan, KT, myself, Melissa Gillenbach, Jason Spetz. We know from our work around emergency preparedness that one of our most likely things to happen that could happen would be some type of a cybersecurity incident, i.e. we get a ransomware attack. In the event that were to happen, it's critical for us to get people to shut down their technology as quickly as possible. So kind of scooping back to when I first took this role 3 years ago, Kelly and I were having a conversation and we were just like, yeah, if we ever have a need to activate our COOP cog, it's going to be challenging because neither of us really knew what was expected of us. So I will leave proud of the fact that we actually have played out the front side of that, and we have our notification of the need and the process kind of nailed down and have now test drove it in various forms twice. But so we know how a COOP cog is activated or what the process is to get it activated. And then after that, honestly, if you can bring all the right people together because you have a way to communicate with each other, you can figure it all out after that. Because I think one of the things that really happened with regard to emergency preparedness planning is that it's like, okay, are we planning for a hurricane? Or are we planning for an earthquake? Or are we planning for a much more likely or tornado, a severe storm or a severe winter storm event? Are we planning for a power outage or a chemical spill? Like it's really hard but if you know that you have the communication piece down, you can figure out the rest of it. And all of our departments do have continuity of operations and continuity of government plans, and they can activate those. I'm not saying that would all go smoothly or flawlessly, but I think we're okay on that side. We just needed to know how to do the front end part of it. So we decided to utilize Code Red, our emergency notification system. We spent some months gathering all of the staff's either personal cell phone, email, or landline, or all three information. And we're pretty complete. We maybe have a handful or two of people who we need to track down to finish that out. But we have all of them loaded into Code Red. So a couple of weeks ago, on a Thursday morning, we ran a drill and said we had been subject to a cybersecurity incident, or I don't know if we said that, whatever we said. But anyway, that they needed to shut down their technology immediately, and then that it was just a drill and they didn't really need to have to do that. And then what we did behind that was ask that each of the managers then confirm. We said your next communication will be from your manager, and we had each of the managers then communicate with their staff, and we'll debrief on that here next week at our department head meeting to see how many staff like, how did that work on the manager's side of actually reaching their staff, or the staff reaching them? But we know, and we would change some things, but we basically only tracked how many responses we got within 15 minutes. And we got about half of our workforce. So we have some work to do with that. But if you think about 24/7 operations, people that could be sleeping, people that could be driving, all of those sorts of things, we can tweak some of that, but we know the system works. And so it's a really good feeling to leave knowing that we have a mechanism for communicating. We have a mechanism as well internally for our onboarding and offboarding process to get people listed with code red and taken off of the list after they're no longer employed. So my kudos to Jake from IT and Dan and Melissa and Jason. As we've worked through that over a many month process, and they probably will run it again here in the fall, just because we know it worked. Let's practice it again, just to solidify that. So, any questions about that?
Supervisor Kinnear.
Thank you. It sounds like you used an old-fashioned phone tree there.
I did.
I just chuckling about it, yeah.
Yes, exactly. And then 2026 wage proposal. Jenna, did you decide you're doing it? Yeah. No, it's not really up to you. Diane indicated, yeah, let's go ahead. Let's do, I know most of you have seen this. Diane has not, Gary has not. And Gary's not here, but I think we can do a relatively quick run through of the 2026 wage proposal, and some of you, it'll be your third more time of seeing it, but I'm going with Supervisor Kinnear's statement that it was helpful after the second time to learn some more things, so.
Okay. Dan and I were saying we had to do a count of how many times we have done this presentation, but we have just finished our roadshow of meetings with each department specifically as it relates to the performance management process that we have just rolled out, as well as the 2026 wage proposal. We have also almost made our way around to all standing committees to just provide the information and make sure that everyone has consistent understanding of what the proposal is and can ask questions ahead of it making its way to the board floor. So I will start by kind of just going over our reflection of our previous performance management process at the county. So what it previously was an annual evaluation form, really kind of like the traditional type process that you would think of when you think of performance evaluations. That was a conversation that was happening one time a year, and there was a pretty lengthy multi-step form associated with that. And we had done some reflecting on that. Honestly, we've had a really low completion rate of performance evaluations in previous years. And so we were looking into that as far as where the bottlenecks are. We've met with several different department heads and identified that the system is really complicated and it's also not providing a lot of value to our staff. So a few goals in mind as we started to kind of overhaul our existing performance management system into what we have rolled out today. The first one being recognizing that employees really need regular and ongoing feedback in order to actually be successful in growing, right? If we're waiting to have a conversation about performance one time a year, that isn't really the best approach to providing employees with an opportunity to grow and improve. We also knew that we needed a more simplified system so that it could apply across the several different departments that we have. It's somewhat a fun challenge in a county setting, having that many different departments with different personalities and professional backgrounds and trying to find a one-size-fits-all solution. So we knew that it needed to be simple enough where managers could take it and customize it to what makes sense in their own department or work unit. But we also needed to balance that with accountability. And what we mean by that is making sure that these performance conversations are taking place and that there is a record of them. And lastly, we wanted to address some of the areas of the employee satisfaction survey that we have just completed the second year of. And looking for improvement in the areas of, and I know this is small, I have regular check-ins with my manager. So there was a notable percentage of employees that disagreed with that statement. Also, my manager holds employees accountable. That also had a notable percentage of employees disagree. And also that my annual performance evaluations help me identify areas for improvement and growth. Another notable percentage of employees disagreeing with that. And so we knew we needed to make some improvements to the performance management system as a whole. I'll also note that the previous form that was intended to be used lived in an area of NeoGov, which is our applicant tracking system. That's where personnel files are electronically stored. This was an additional module for NeoGov that had an additional cost associated with it. And so we looked at that and we really reflected on, are we getting what we wanted out of this? And does this make sense to continue? Also knowing that NeoGov has assigned a pretty steady percentage increase year over year on the renewal. So we were also considering the fiscal responsibility of our new approach. So this is the process. We're basically saying we want managers to at least have a conversation with their employees at least 4 times a year. Best practice, honestly, is to have a weekly check-in with employees, but we knew that that was kind of a heavy lift, maybe isn't as feasible in certain departments. So we've landed on quarterly really as a pretty big step in the better direction compared to 1 time per year. And so we're not saying the manager and the employee have to fill out this long, complicated, multi-step form 4 times a year. This is really just intended to say, have a conversation about your employee's performance, the wins, and what's maybe needing improvement on or around January 1, April 1, July 1, and October 1. Managers have 45 days between January 1 and February 15th in order to complete those check-in forms. So the form is really simple. We didn't put a copy of it in here, but the countywide email that was sent out does have a video with some examples of what that looks like. But it is a simple overall rating, 1 rating, and a box for the manager to put a narrative of how the conversation went, both the manager's point of view and also what the employee brought to the table for that conversation.
Absolutely. Supervisor Morehouse.
Thank you. So the employee has an opportunity to comment on that form?
There is not, so in considering a simple system, we did not require for an employee to have a step in that process. It is just the manager. We've had a lot of questions about that. Can I, add a supplement? And the answer is yes. There can be an attachment added to that evaluation form. Also, if an employee were to reach out to HR with anything specifically that they would like added as a supplement to their performance rating, we would attach it at that point as well. We really want to encourage as much as possible for employees to have that conversation with their manager first to say, look, I really don't agree with this. Can you help me understand kind of where you're coming from? And they're the two most equipped people to resolve that disagreement. If it doesn't, certainly we're able to step in and try and work towards some common ground between the manager and the employee. But we really want to encourage that open and honest dialogue between the two of them before it would get to that level.
Supervisor Kinnear.
Yeah, I didn't quite understand your answer when Diane asked if the employee has a chance to actually put a couple sentences in there in the actual evaluation that the two worked on. Do they? Or is this something separate that you would do, or is it something?
There's
You
kind
have
of
to-
a few options to that. The employee does not have a specific like box to fill out on the form itself, but the manager can attach any sort of documentation in addition to that form. So if an employee has a self-reflection or other documentation regarding their performance that they want attached to that, the manager can attach that. If the employee, well, also the employee will have visibility of the form after it's in their file. So if they see that their attachment didn't make its way in there, they have a concern about that, they can reach out to us and we can make sure that it gets included. But there isn't a specific step on the actual form itself that routes to the employee. One of the biggest hangups in the previous process was that it went to it had multiple steps. It started with the employee, then it went to the manager, then it went back to the employee. And that's where things got hung up and it became a bottleneck. And so we really wanted to lean into completion or encourage completion of this process while also building in mechanisms for there to be supplemental information.
Okay, so they can have something attached if they want.
They can, yes. Sorry, that was the long answer.
Hard for me to understand sometimes.
So this new process involves 3 different performance ratings. One being exceeds expectations. So this would be an employee that is consistently exceeding the baseline expectations of a job, going above and beyond, maybe showing initiative and innovation. And there are no areas that require improvement. That doesn't mean that somebody can't always grow or develop, but this means that someone is sufficient and beyond all of the core functions of their job, and they don't have to improve any certain thing. Meets expectations would be the employee that's really solidly performing the key functions of the job. They don't require any areas of improvement, and they're effective at their job. There might, again, be areas for growth, but nothing that requires improvement. And lastly, needs improvement. That rating is intended for employees that are really not performing to the expectations of the role in one or more areas. So this is someone that's likely on a performance improvement plan or has received disciplinary action relating to performance. This is someone that really needs to improve in order for there to not be further interventions. We anticipate that anybody that receives this rating, they should know by now that they're in a space of needing improvement, but at a minimum, they will have the July through August 15th timeframe for their manager to have that conversation with them. Then they have until their next check-in to work on those areas and tend to that, and they can really have that specific conversation with their manager about what they would need to do in order to meet expectations by October.
Supervisor Morehouse.
First of all, absolutely understand that this is your purview and not ours, not mine. And I know you all hate me because I often am saying things about measurement. But I guess my question is, what training will the managers receive so that they are essentially rating employees according to the same criteria and on a scale? I mean, these scales are okay. They leave some room for interpretation. So a system that doesn't have that kind of inter-rater reliability is sometimes really problematic. And so I just would really urge you to ensure that the managers understand those points on the scale and how the process is going to work. Otherwise, it's a lot of effort for probably not the greatest results.
Right. We have trained, like I would say 98% of the managers already on this process specifically, but also how to approach that. And I'll kind of jump way ahead here. This is, and I should have brought some printed copies, but this is an example of, this is a page from what managers were provided with. We call it a manager checking guide. They were given resources on order on how to effectively approach these checking conversations, what to consider in assigning ratings. And what this core values rubric shows is basically behavior indicators. So each core value is listed, core value is listed here. Dedication, ethics, betterment, professionalism, and collaboration. Those are core values that the county board and the employee population said this is what we want to be living out in our work. And an employee that maybe shows some room for improvement, let's say, for example, in the area of betterment, maybe they're dismissive or they resist feedback or change compared to somebody that meets expectations in that way. They're accepting of feedback, they embrace change. And then somebody that might exceed expectations in the area of betterment, they're actively seeking out feedback and opportunities to learn and grow. So knowing that there are 150 plus different positions here at the county, and that's kind of what we mean by a simple system. It's really hard to come up with any sort of task related competencies for each position. We are asking the managers to build that out in a way that makes sense for their field of work. But we feel that this rubric outlines behaviors and examples of living out the county values across all positions at the county. It can be really hard to define task-related competencies for, let's say, a social worker compared to a deputy clerk. So we have provided the training and support for managers to build that out on their own in a way that they feel that they need to. This is intended to be kind of a baseline foundation for them to work from.
And I'll note in the conversations we've had, one of the things, this is, the front end of the implementation. As the data comes in over the course of the year, they'll be looking at it and saying, do we have outliers? Do we have one manager who's producing very different results from another? And then that'll allow them to go back in and look at the data and say, okay, what do we need to adjust in order to make it work better?
All have been trained and encouraged, if they have multiple levels of management, like in a big department, for the management team to be calibrating their ratings and making sure that they're kind of on a level playing field as it relates to their specific line of work. The other thing that this can outline is that exceeding expectations doesn't always have to mean that somebody has to do more, right? We've heard that concern. If I consistently doing something outside of my job description, pretty soon I'm not even doing my job, right? And it doesn't always have to mean doing more. What these core values can show is that it's more about how employees show up to work and communicate with each other and work as part of a team. Additional questions on this?
yeah, I'll check it. Thank you, Vaughn.
I have. And so understanding, like, I think there is a comfort level with a numerical rating, right? That feels more scientific. We do recognize that there is a level of subjectivity here, and that is what we're trusting managers with. We've provided the last 2 years of training to as many managers as possible on how to have clear and sometimes difficult conversations with employees about performance, how to give feedback effectively, not shy away from it. And so even though it does feel a little bit scary kind of jumping into this new change, we feel that we are set up much more appropriately than we would have been maybe 2 years ago. And intend to continue providing that training. Absolutely. Okay, so those were the kind of the nuts and bolts of the performance process in general that we have rolled out. As I said, there was a longer, like, in your spare time, if you want to watch the 10-minute video that was sent out in the countywide email that has even more details about the performance management process specifically. But let's dive in more to the proposed wages and then that structure for 2026. You've probably heard or had discussions about how we are proposing to remove the specific step system that currently exists. So we have 25 pay grades, and each, that's A through W. Each position is assigned to a pay grade. And then on each grade right now, there are 11 incremental steps that exist. And that's provided some difficulty when we kind of sit down and start to talk about, okay, what kind of wage increase can we propose for the next budget year? Because those steps are locked in at 2.75% no matter what. And so it's always often a dilemma of, can we do a step or can we do a cost of living? I think the county's done whatever possible to provide both. And we'll talk more about kind of what that looks like. So we are proposing to remove the specific step system. There is specific language in the current personnel code that says we have 11 steps and 25 pay grades. And so with the proposed HR code, that would allow more flexibility. It basically says the county manager recommends a structure, and then the Committee on Administration and the board would still have to approve that, but we don't have to change the ordinance every time we want to change that. And then for 2026 pay increases, we are proposing for that October performance rating to be tied to the percentage increase that they receive. And this is also a change from what is currently done now. And what does that look like? So we are proposing for employees that receive needs improvement in their October rating that they would not receive a pay increase for 2026. Again, this is not intended to be a large percentage of employees. This is really the ones that are either on a performance improvement plan or kind of on the verge of disciplinary action and not meeting the expectations of their job. The July performance conversation will be really fundamental for them to understand exactly what they need to do in order to meet expectations in time for the next rating period. For meeting expectations, we are proposing a 2.75% increase from the employees' 2025 rate to their 2026 rate. For exceeding expectations, we are proposing 3.25%. So there is that 0.5% difference for employees that exceed expectations. We are not anticipating, this is not to say we don't have a lot of great employees at the county, but we wouldn't anticipate for there to be an overwhelmingly large percentage of exceeding expectations. This is really intended for those few that are above and beyond the expectations. This does, so the 2.75%, that does include 2.25% of that is what we call now the cost of living adjustment. And then 0.5% to get to 2.75. So This is basically a 2.25% cost of living adjustment plus 0.5% for meeting performance expectations. Exceeding expectations, again, 2.25% for cost of living, and then a 1% for exceeding. Employees at the max rate of pay, so what is now employees at step 11, they can't go any higher on the pay grade. We've heard from committee members and the committee on administration, as well as employees and managers across the county, that they would really like to see the ability for employees at the top of the pay grade to earn something if they exceed expectations. That does not currently exist now either. They are only receiving the equivalent of the cost of living adjustment now. So proposing for them to go up with the cost of living adjustment and then pay the difference between cost of living and 3.25% in the form of a lump sum bonus. So why are we doing this? Why have we had 25 plus meetings about this with departments? Really, we wanted to try and bring everyone along as much as we can in what has led to this proposal, because we understand that it's disappointing. It's different than what employees are used to. They're used to having that fixed 2.75% step in addition to some version of a cost of living adjustment. That's most commonly been about 2%. So combined with a step and a market cost of living adjustment, it's about a 4.75% increase each year. Now take out the portion of employees that are already at the max. They don't get another step, right? But for the most part, a 4.75% annual increase has been most common throughout the years. I talked about how the fixed step system limits flexibility in talking about, okay, what can we do for 2026? As it is now, we have the option of providing a 2.75% step and a cost of living adjustment, or providing nothing, 0%. It's either 0 or 2.5% because we have no ability to kind of meet in the middle. And so we feel that, although this is not the type of increase that people are used to, it still provides something in the version of a performance or a merit related increase. We would also anticipate for this to change year to year. We would start early on in the year to start proposing what this percentage would look like. We're not locking in these numbers year over year.
Supervisor Kinnear.
I have a question about the flexibility. What you're proposing is a 2.75% for the majority of the people, which would be a step.
It is the equivalent of what is now a step. So if you see a step, you're on a step 4 and you're looking at step 5 and you think that's what I'm going to make next year, that does match.
Okay. As far as the flexibility goes, I know you told us before that, and I remember that we've actually frozen steps before.
Mhm.
I thought the county board had the ability to offer any kind of raise, whether it was freezing it and then giving them a 1% step, or not step, 1% raise, or freezing it and giving a 1.3 or a 2.7. I thought we had more flexibility than what you're telling me.
Essentially, based on how the ordinance is currently written, the county board has flexibility in deciding the overall adjustment to the pay grid, right? Like the cost of living adjustment. You could decide 3%, 4%, right, to that. But if you then say, we'll also approve a step increase, that's automatically 2.75 because they're fixed.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't explain myself clearly. Could the county board just say, we're not going to provide a step increase?
Yes.
But we're going to provide a 10%, who cares what the percent is? We're going to provide a certain percentage for everybody. Could the county board do that?
Yes.
Okay, so we do have the flexibility.
What
We
That-
have the flexibility to adjust the one side of the equation. If we want to keep the steps, we do not have flexibility to adjust the amount in the step
Right.
without changing the ordinance. So the idea here is to remove the piece that is inflexible and potentially, there's no reason, for example, we couldn't have that 4.75 without the step structure. It's just giving us the ability to adjust all of the variables.
Mhm.
Adjusting them without changing the ordinance.
Yeah,
Because
The-
we could change the ordinance and do anything we
Absolutely.
wanted.
Yeah.
Okay,
That's-
that's what I wanted to get at. So we do have flexibility, but it's more difficult. Okay,
Yeah, so, and the few years that there wasn't approval to give a step increase, what that does is like keeps the employee exactly where they're at on their pay range. They don't move up at all within that pay grade. They stay stagnant, right? They don't make any progress towards that maximum rate of pay that really everyone's striving for, right? So that has often been a challenging decision to be communicating to folks. And with not providing, like if we were to say, give a step and no cost of living, then what that does is it keeps our wage grades stagnant so that they start to fall out of competitiveness with comparable counties. So some combination of both is what we are, I mean, what the county has strived to provide, 2.75 plus cost of living, but we'll look at on the next few slides kind of why we're proposing for there to be a little bit more flexibility without changing the ordinance year over year on what that, how much of a percentage an employee moves up on the pay grade by. Does that help?
yeah,
Okay.
I understand what you're saying. Yeah,
yeah, I think one of the other considerations that has been communicated to me is when you freeze the steps. So someone comes in last year, they're at step one arbitrarily. If you freeze the steps, someone coming in this year comes in at that same step one, and so it crowds the steps as well as freezing the pay.
Right, right. There starts to become like compression with years of experience compared to new hires coming in. So we talked about typically the county's provided a 2.75% step and 2% cost of living, about 4.75% annual increase for most staff. This is really roughly about a $2 million increase year over year. And we'll kind of look at how that looks over time. And then the other reason why we're doing this is because we've received feedback via our employee satisfaction survey, showing us that about a quarter of our staff are dissatisfied with compensation. And that's even with a step process. And you might ask, okay, why are you proposing less? But what's been interesting in digging into that more is for the majority, the dissatisfaction was more about, well, I show up to work and I give it my all and do my best, and I see my peer who's barely contributing. They receive the same exact pay increase that I do year over year. What's motivating me to continue giving it my all? And we would like to think that everyone's intrinsically motivated to do their best. But we know that we've struggled with having any sort of recognition or reward for employees that are.
Yeah, Supervisor Morehouse.
Are you at all concerned that the people who are at exceeds expectations, who are, given their all and then some, that essentially the differentiation between their pay increase and the pay increase of those who are meeting expectations is 0.5%? Is that, do you worry that that is a disincentive?
Oh, that's an interesting question. We do recognize that a 0.5% isn't a big difference, right?
No, it really
That
isn't.
is somewhat purposeful with this first year because we know that managers are still learning and like getting to a place of assigning fair and consistent ratings. We didn't want there to be a huge swing in that to like negatively impact anybody in a significant way. In future years, we will likely propose for that spread to be a little bit bigger once we have a comfort level and once we honestly know more about the percentages of exceeding versus meeting, which can change over time. But this is really a baseline year for us to kind of get a gauge and not wanting a huge swing to sneak up on us, I guess, either way. Did I answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
but It's a concern.
If I could ask for if there's room for feedback on amending the proposal based on that concern, would seek that input.
I mean, I certainly understand the fiscal implications of, continuing at a 4.75%. I mean, obviously, we all understand that. But it does concern me at the top of the rating scale that we have a number of people who, are really our stellar
Mhm.
performers. We could certainly lose them if they don't feel that if their work is really rewarded. I mean, so I would, if it's financially feasible, I would argue for a larger, maybe a 1% up from the meets expectations as
Mhm.
opposed to the 0.5.
Mhm.
I mean, it's just a recognition in a new system that people who are, really star performers, we like you, we value you, we want to keep you, and here's to the best of our ability a way to reward you.
Mhm. I align with that. Currently, our system doesn't allow for any sort of monetary recognition in that way, right? So even a 0.5% difference is a step in a better direction with that, but I absolutely recognize, that's a small swing for this first year.
Supervisor Headland.
And this has been modified a little bit already. Our original proposal that we discussed and came from recommendation was a 2.5 and then a 3. The gap was still the same.
Yeah.
Yeah, but through some of the meetings, they had employees said, well, could it, but that was only 0.25% above what a standard had been in the past. And so they asked for this. So I think maybe in the first year, like you say, we're kind of floating around here, but not that it's got to be one thing or another, but I think it represents information they've got from feedback up to this point.
Well, and I will note that when we get to the point of actually approving the numbers, you are certainly well within your rights to propose an amendment. And
Mhm.
if you can get a second and the votes, absolutely bump it up.
Got it.
Yeah, okay.
I don't think HR would be at all unhappy with you.
No,
about
that would be a lot easier, to be honest. Okay, so let's look at why we have landed where we have for the proposal. So this will all be familiar to you, but this is something that we've also tried to explain to employees and at the department meetings that we've had. So this is a graph of the net new construction percentages. Like that is the equivalent of how much we can raise the levy by each year. So this goes back to 2016, but we can see in 2025 here sitting at about 1.75%. So when we talk about 4.75% to like the largest portion of our budget in personnel costs, that's when we start to worry. And what does that look like? So for the last 5 years, so this is 2020 until 2025. In 2020, our overall, that's top number here, our overall personnel and fringe costs were 36 million. The amount that the county received an additional levy due to the net new construction percentage was 212,000. In 2021, there was 2% approved, no steps that year. The cost still went up to 37.6 million. And the amount that was received due to the net new construction was 344,000. If we look ahead to 2025, our overall wage and fringe cost is 49.3 million. We provided a 2% cost of living adjustment and a step this year. The amount that we received in additional revenue due to net new construction was 126,000. This number here represents the difference between last year's salary and fringe versus this year. So we had to find roughly $2.08 million to fund that wage increase year over year. Again, this is overall cost. So we know that there are other revenue sources or grants, there's reimbursements and things like that. This is the overall cost. So this is what it would look like if we continued on status quo. So this is 2026. If we were to provide a 2% cost of living adjustment and steps, we'd be looking for about $2.3 million more dollars for next year. The costing at 2.75% for next year would land at 50.6 million. So that's a difference of about 986,000 basically between what is status quo and what we are proposing. When we look at the next 5 years, by 2030, our wage and fringe costs are at about 62 million. We've also added over $2 million each year. So we needed to find it for 2026. We found 2.3, we made it work. If you were to figure that out, we would have to spend that 2.3 again for 2027 and find an additional 2.4. What's interesting, if you look at this number, 62 million by 2030, and you look back to 2020, 36 million, it's nearly doubled. And we have a really hard time proposing something that we know will get us into some really difficult times if we continue on this same path. It would be a lot easier if we didn't. So essentially, at the end of the day, our options with our proposal that we're laying out is a 2.25% market adjustment plus another 0.5% for meeting and another 1% for exceeding. This allows that flexibility to identify. The county board can say, we want this to be 1%, we want this to be 2%, right? There's more flexibility there for you to identify that performance-related percentage. And we feel that this also provides recognition that doesn't exist now for high performers. We are currently at risk of losing our high performers without any means to provide that recognition. Versus if we stayed status quo, if we did not make any changes to the personnel ordinance to remove that specific language about the steps, the options for next year that the board would be looking at would be 2.25% or whatever version of a market adjustment you would land at, and either a 2.75% step or zero. So we are looking to provide the board with more adaptability in identifying these performance or merit related increases year over year. Knowing that this is a big change, I said that we had just wrapped up our roadshow of going around to each department. We wanted to be really mindful about keeping the groups small enough for people to be able to be comfortable speaking up, asking questions, sharing their concerns. We also intend to provide ongoing email updates. With any change that has happened, it's been communicated in the county manager's weekly email, and anything really substantial we would communicate kind of on its own. By the time everything would be approved, the budget's been adopted, and that last performance rating window has closed. Our team in human resources will work to put together individual comp statements that will tell them exactly what they're making in 25, what they will make in 26. And we also intend to wrap in kind of like a total compensation statement so that they can see the cost of their benefits and all of that. We don't currently have any mechanism for providing those. So we're going to figure that out. We're hopeful that our next payroll system will have that functionality next year. We also intend to host town hall sessions January and February of next year, just to hear from people what's going well, what's not. Of course, always willing to meet individually and hear people out if they're not comfortable in a group setting. But what that will do is provide us with any inputs to consider as we start to think about 2027, which we'll be here before we know it. And then just in general, ongoing support. I talked about how the last 2 years we've really poured into leadership and management training. We continue to plan to do that, and we're also going to provide training and support for employees, even on for how to provide feedback effectively and just be able to create really a work environment of authenticity and feedback. In a it doesn't have to be positive feedback for it to be a positive thing. I will end it there and answer any other questions that you have.
Supervisor Kinnear.
As usual, I'm sorry.
It's the job, man. It's all good.
So do I understand the staff going to be evaluated in July? And then come October, they're going to be told, you don't meet performance, you meet or you exceed. And I keep hearing that this is something that the manager is going to be learning to do and we're going to have to calibrate and so forth. If someone goes these 3 months and then they get evaluated at not meeting standards, that seems like not appropriate or not fair because they haven't had time to make an adjustment. The managers haven't really had time to learn to actually do it. Is there going to be any kind of oversight?
Yes, we do
Explain.
intend. So we're able to report out on all of the ratings, making sure what's completed, what's not, and then also viewing kind of patterns and trends as it relates to certain departments. We also intend to look at every single employee that receives a needs improvement rating and make sure that there is good documentation about why. And likely, just to ensure that that's fair, right? Because we wouldn't want anybody to be going into next year without a raise if that wasn't justified. And we intend to do that throughout. We're already looking at it now during this rating period, and able to kind of reach out and ask questions and get an understanding. This July rating period will really provide us with some insights or maybe even some additional things to follow up on before October. There's no doubt that it is quick, but the reason for that is really this. We're worried about what that might mean for 2027 budget and beyond.
So that's why you didn't delay implementing connecting the budget or the pay to the performance and just practice it for a year because of the budget. I didn't say that very good. You could have, go ahead. You want to summarize for me?
Technically, they aren't connected. So the intent was to implement the rating system this year. That's an internal decision. That's
Right.
very much management.
Yep.
The wage increase is very much policy. So they're not actually tied together. It's just in the process of doing one, it became very clear that if you're going to do this, it gives you the tools also to do this.
Yes, I was just wondering about timing, but the timing being, would it be better, or did you consider, I should say, did you consider saying, we're going to try out this rating system, have our managers practice it for a year, and then link it to the raises?
Yes, yes. I'll be honest and say, I think my motivation in looking to do this right away is I'm worried about going another year and not having any means to recognize the high performers and see them leave. But I recognize the concerns on the other side of maybe not receiving a rating that somebody agrees with or otherwise. So I think both things can be true.
And I will note that the number of people who might fall into the needs improvement is very, very small.
It should be, if
Yes.
the managers have been doing their duty.
Yep, and it's very small.
So I just want to clarify, absolutely, if the board decided, no, we're not ready for this difference between meeting and exceeding, certainly we can look at amending it in that way. But this is the proposal as of now. So I appreciate your time and your questions.
Anybody else? All right, looks like you're off the hook. Good job. All right, item 6, reports, resolutions, and ordinances to the county board from the executive committee, a resolution for 2025 budget amendments, CJC, emergency communication and management, sheriff, county fair, veteran services, county parks, IT. You have the matter before you. Are there any clarifying questions that anyone needs to ask? Yeah, I didn't think so. Okay, now I need a motion and a second. Supervisor Bauer, Supervisor Morehouse. All right, any speaking to the motion? Okay, going twice? All right, then we are ready to vote on the matter before you. Although, oh wait, actually, this is yeah, we can, yeah, because right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. All right. On to 7, review of reports, resolutions, and ordinances coming to the county board from the standing committees. Planning, resource, and development rezone. Does anyone have any questions? Does not look like it. All right, Committee on Administration, ordinance revision, replace personnel ordinances with the Human Resources Code. And all of the entailed stuff with that, which is what we've just been talking about with Jenna. Does anyone have any questions on that we haven't already covered? All right, seeing none, on to item 8. Reports from the standing committees, committee on a blah, blah, blah. So I'm going to start over here. Supervisor Wilsey. Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. I read them as the entailed part of it. Anyway, okay. My apologies. Item 2, resolution amending job class and class inventory. Item 3, requesting one-time payment for correctional officers. 4, resolution to amend HR policy, total base wages and other forms of compensation. Any questions? Resolution to amend 2025 wage grid, likewise. Resolution amending job class inventory. Okay. Thank you for the reminder. I am apparently in a hurry to get to the end of the meeting.
Why?
Oh, it's all good. All right. Reports from standing committees going for the second time. Supervisor Wilsey. You need to get your microphone.
Okay. So we last met June, and the couple things I wanted to go over, and I want to bring up traffic safety that we had was interesting. There was a question asked about, with the ATVs being open. The report of any incidents or what they've been having. So within the last year, they had 9 crashes. There was 74 incidents, 16 tickets, and 4 OWIs. So that was just a report on since we opened the trails. And they wanted to make it clear that if you're traveling on a state road, it's a $232 ticket, no questions asked. The other interesting thing that they had is they're asking everyone to start putting emergency contacts on their driver's license, which I didn't know that was a thing. But I see now that is a thing, and they said it just makes it a lot easier for them to get in contact if there's an accident with somebody, a relative. Yes. Yep. So they said they started encouraging people to do that. And then the other big thing that we had, which was on the county website, was the DA had a case that went all the way to the Supreme Court. And I believe the gist of it was that there was a girl that testified, and the family was kind of like trying to say that she wasn't telling the truth, and it went all the way to, and the DA backed her, and it went all the way to the Supreme Court, and on a 7-0 decision, they sided with us. So it was quite neat. She explained it in our meeting. So we have a meeting this Monday, and that's it.
Thank you, Supervisor Wilsey. Supervisor Vogel.
Thank you. The Facilities Committee met on July 16th. We had a fair board report, so it starts today. It started at 3 o'clock, so everyone go to the county fair this weekend. She was very busy, but everything should be ready. Then we had a great facilities and parks report from Austin. He started a new program called LEAF. So lowering expenses in all facilities. I had to check it on that. So yeah, so looking for all sorts of things, they noticed they could save up to $2,000 on different air fresheners throughout the facilities, and also looking at trash removal and how often. So he's jumped right in, and he's looking for things that can be, reduced expenses. They had some trees at Caddy Woodlawn that went down, so they were cleaning up those, and they ordered 2 Kubotas instead of John Deere's for their 0-turn mowers. So our next meeting is August 13th at 5 p.m. We've had to keep moving things around because all the county board meetings have been moving to our space. All right, thanks.
All right. Thank you, Supervisor Vogel. Supervisor Quinn.
You. The Planning, Research and Development Committee met on last Wednesday, the 16th. We had a, let's see, we did have I think we had just had reports from the departments, which are always excellent. Nothing specifically I can think of to draw attention to. And we also reviewed recommendations from the Groundwater Ad Hoc Committee. You might remember that a number of years ago, 5-6 years ago, the county board, at the request of the committee, established an ad hoc committee that included some citizens and staff and committee members to review a number of elements of concerns about groundwater resources in the county. And that committee came up with an extensive list of recommendations, which the staff has been very good at putting together in a kind of a template form. And every so often, maybe twice a year, we will review that template and note the items that have been addressed during the year. And it's really been proven pretty helpful. So things just don't drop off the face of the earth. That report gets looked at regularly, and we can tell whether or not we're making progress on it. And we are. So we looked at that. And then we also had a fact sheet put together by staff and with help from the DNR and from a local citizen environmental group to look at the whole question of how septic land spreadage is regulated in the state and how it is the implications of that for Dunn County. And that answered a number of questions that have come up both in the committee meetings in the past year, but also just in general by citizens about how this process operates. And I think it clarified it for the committee. So that was very helpful. And then, of course, we have the rezone that's on the agenda for this month. That's all. Thanks.
Thank you, Supervisor Quinn. Supervisor Morehouse.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Health and Human Services Board last met on June 26th. We had a second round of public comment on the inspection of mobile home communities. Mobile home communities are regulated under the Department of Safety and Professional Services, which I didn't know about. But a municipality or an agency can ask for delegated authority to proceed with that. Delegations are only issued to local health departments. What we are discovering about this is that this is a multi-layered process on its face. Why would we not want people in mobile home communities to live in safety? But there are many ramifications of this, including the possibility of creating additional homelessness. So KT has been great in providing information about this. When she worked in Eau Claire, she worked in environmental health and was the person who assisted with these inspections. Eau Claire County has delegated authority. But anyway, we will continue to look at it. We haven't taken any decisions, but it's interesting, and it will certainly require some additional ordinance and other changes if we elect to go forward. We had great reports from our departments. We always do. And it's particularly interesting when Veterans Service does its report about the kind of collaboration that's going on between Veterans Services and the Health Department and the Department of Human Services. They're innovative in their ways of working together. And just not coincidentally, in the last 6 months, Veterans Service has brought over $600,000 in retroactive payments to veterans and their families into that county. For public health, disappointing news. WIC's Women, Infant, and Children program, the cash value benefits for fruit and vegetables, and a decrease in overall WIC funding. The cut to the cash benefit to purchase fruit and vegetables would go from $26 to $10 for children, $47 to $13 for pregnant or postpartum parents, and from $52 to $13 for breastfeeding women. And we're monitoring additional cuts to that. We did our usual, we reviewed vouchers, budget adjustment, and approved a letter of support for a new grant. And our next meeting is tomorrow at 6.
Thank you, Supervisor Morehouse. Supervisor Prochnow.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We met on July 9th, which was, usually we have this meeting right after that, so it was a couple weeks ago, so this has already changed. But anyway, the field operations, working on County Road Y, County Road J projects. They should be blacktop. They're probably getting shouldered already. Shouldering on County Road S and G. Mowing operations, state highways are getting done. We're mowing the north to 94, north half of the county road. So that's been started this last couple of weeks. Seal coating was July 7th through the 15th, which there was an accident, but I haven't had a report on that yet. So otherwise, the Irvington Hill should be done by the end of this month. So that should all be wrapped up. The Jake's Pioneer project out there looks like it's gonna be a go, so we'll be starting working on that. The County Road BB out by John Deere, that's supposed to be pulverized this week, but I don't know, weather delays might be taking longer than that. Otherwise, like I say, we're continuing working on the County Road J, getting that one done. And starting the next one, so that's what we're working on. Next meeting is August 13th.
Thank you Supervisor Prochnow. Supervisor Kinnear.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Neighbors of Dunn County met last Thursday. And as I've been speaking about, we've got a CNA course that runs there, and we've got a couple of people that were homemakers, and they applied for the CNA course, and they're going through it, and they're going to graduate and stay with us, which helps to say we're also in the black, and those kinds of things help quite a deal. They continue to do really well with the surveys when they come in and check on us. They just do an excellent job. And now Brady, now I lost the last name, McGrath, has taken over and is doing a great job out there. Our next meeting is the fourth Thursday in August.
Thank you Supervisor Kinnear. Supervisor Bauer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We met on Tuesday, July 15th, right here in this room. Extension Director Kirsten talked about the Food Wise program that had been canceled by federal. We're gonna lose they're gonna lose 4 employees. The first one will be in September. The other one, then it'll be in October 1st, November 1st, and December 1st. They're gonna be able to hold them till the end of the year, the last one. The reason they do it on the 1st is so that they get the insurance for the full month before they go. So at least they got insurance for the extra month. We had standing committees had good reports. I mean, Adam Alcoa had a good report on branding, housing, and the business retention and expansion, small business and entrepreneurship, and that went well. We agreed on 10% for out of county libraries and 100% for in-county libraries. We had around 709,000, I think it was a total, 0.6, something like that. So it's getting up right there. We're looking at, in the meeting we had with the library committee, couple of them were getting a little up there. I think it was, Boyceville was down like 12,000. So we're gonna see what we can do to help them out. They're gonna go back to, they're taking it back to their library committees and back to to see what they can do to get more funding to the city and whatever else that they can do. And if the county is gonna be able to help them out. So we'll get a report back later on that. Other budgets was the West Wisconsin Regional Planning Commission. Their budget was okayed. Dunn County Housing Authority was okayed for 49,000. And Dunn County Economic Development was also approved for 55,000. So our next meeting is Tuesday, August 19th.
Thank you Supervisor Bauer. Supervisor Headland.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess I would just like to start by saying thank you to everybody that was here and I guess accepted all our work that we did yesterday afternoon here in this room. Again, all the, amending job classifications and taking care of our employees out at the jail, who are a lot of them on step 11, and raising up and becoming more competitive to keep our management out there, our captains and our sergeants. Very necessary. Obviously, we don't want to go through a period where we know it's a little bit of a merry-go-round maybe in the area where, one county takes a look and if they lose staff, we do the same thing. We sneak them to somebody else. But so we do need, as HR has done a good job, stay competitive where we can and certainly I guess that's why I like this proposal of performance. Obviously we hire so much time has been spent the last couple of years in hiring staff, training staff, that would be nice if we could just spend that on promoting money to performing staff. So hopefully what we're proposing will work. Again, along with that, that pretty much takes care of what we did. That was yesterday here. Our next meeting will be August 28th, 3:00 in this room. Thank you.
Thank you Supervisor Headland. Our next meeting date, I don't think we have anything that we need to do before the budget workshop in August. In which case,
Not that I'm aware of.
all right, if that changes, we'll let you know, but for the moment, you're off the hook for exec in August. Yeah, huh? I would like to note one other thing. This is Chris's last executive committee meeting. And we are going to miss you, but also, like I always tell people, run like the wind.
No problem with that. Got my hip fixed.
Alrighty. And with that, we are adjourned.